However, many of those whom the Bible calls false prophets were actually just lackeys who spoke in an encouraging way. God this, God that. They weren't really speaking on behalf of God. They just wanted to believe what they were saying, or they said what motivated the king, basically. Suddenly, a real prophet appears and says, "If you go into this battle, you will die." I saw a spirit who said he would be a lying spirit in the mouths of the prophets. Since the Lord had decided that you must die, you know how the king disguises himself. Nevertheless, he is killed in that battle, and what the prophet Micaiah said comes true. But this happens on the second day, after the prophecy is spoken. If we are talking about future generations here, as in the book of the prophet Daniel, where it says, "Seal up the prophecy," that's how it is in the Old Testament. Is there perhaps one way to tell if a prophet is genuine? And it is the following. A prophet is extremely socially engaged. He is not so much interested in what will happen in the future as he is in what is happening in the present. He is extremely sensitive to social injustice, to the oppression of the weak, the foreigner, the widow, and the orphan. And he claims that if things continue this way, corruption in the temple, corruption in the palace, the breakdown of society, disregard for the law, if the present continues to be affirmed like this, the future will be death, war, apocalypse. This is something people don't want to hear because now is the moment when they're counting their profits, and those profits are enormous, and no one wants to believe that tomorrow will bring loss. In other words, the prophet comes and says, if things continue like this today, tomorrow will be a complete disaster, and you will have to pay the full price. Basically, prophets, authentic prophets, were characterized by the fact that they were not lackeys, they did not affirm the status quo, they were not sycophants, and they did not take bribes. This is also a very important point. You can find it everywhere in the Bible, and again, it is remarkable. Sensitivity to social injustices. False prophets are exactly the opposite. Now, moving very briefly into the New Testament, we already have a situation where a person with the gift of prophecy, or someone who prophesies, because it's not necessary to be a prophet in order to prophesy, your young men will see visions, says Joel. This is something that, according to Peter, is fulfilled on the day of Pentecost, when the Spirit of God comes and says, God will pour out His Spirit on all flesh. In the last days, your young men will see visions, your old men will dream dreams. In other words, it is said here that prophecy and prophetic insight are now accessible to anyone who is a person of God. In other words, supernatural guidance is something that is available to everyone, so there is no need for a prophet. Who needed a prophet in ancient times? The blind man. The one who does not have spiritual eyes, the one who cannot perceive the spiritual, he is the one who needs a prophet, who in that generation acted as a shepherd, a guide for the people. In the New Testament, everyone is graced, and everyone has the Spirit of God, and everyone is entitled to divine guidance. That is why it will be said that everyone who is led by the Spirit of God is a son of God. Of course, he is talking about the gift of prophecy, which everyone should desire, but there he says that the one who prophesies speaks for conviction, instruction, and correction. But the question is this: he is speaking in the context of spiritual matters. A community that can discern whether the one who is speaking from the Spirit. Why? Because when the Spirit speaks, this can already be felt by all who are filled with the grace of the Spirit. They may not have received the word themselves, but they have a special sense of whether the one who is speaking from the Spirit. So, in most cases, those who are spiritual in the presence of God can perceive who is speaking from the Spirit. The next point, and with this I will finish so as not to give such a lengthy answer to